Hi, so this is the third video in my vlog about making micro-budget films or movies. So in this video we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people are really preoccupied with, which is video cameras, right, or what you're shooting on, right? Now obviously we're talking about micro-budget here, so really the idea of shooting on most types of film are out of the question. You might be able to, on a really low budget, afford to shoot on some 8mm stock, but really let's keep it simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a few options of some low budget cameras. One of the films that I worked on recently, and the camera that we use for a lot of our stuff on area50bun.com is an XM2, which is a pretty, well, it's a very good camera basically, but we're dealing with low budget here, so micro budget rather. And you might not be as lucky as I am to be working with someone who has his own equipment, right? So Alan, who I work with, has access to an XM2 camera, and he's always really keen to use it, which is brilliant. And he's filmed some brilliant stuff on his own as well using that camera. But anyway, so I'm going to take you through the cameras and talk through your sort of options. Alright, so here we go. Here we have our low budget cameras. So here we have this is a Video 8 camera. This is a High 8 camera. This is a solid state camera. This is a digital I can't even speak properly, a digital stills camera, and here we have a mobile phone with a decent enough camera on it. Okay, so let's talk about these first, because this is what I'm actually going to be using. These are Video 8 or High 8 cameras. Now these are the types of cameras that were used before the advent of mini DV. Now the chances are you are probably going to either buy yourself a cheap mini DV camera, or you might have access to a family camcorder which is a mini DV camera. So your picture quality will actually be of a higher resolution and be better than what I'm dealing with. So if I get great results with these, then you should get even better results with what you have. So anyway, we have these two cameras. This one I suppose doesn't really count, because this one I was given for free by a friend. His family were going to throw it out, so it's actually a Sony Video 8 camera, which is pretty cool. But this one I did pay for. This one about 4 or 5 years ago I bought for £50 on eBay, and the quality on it's actually pretty remarkable for a High 8 camera. So there are great bargains to be found out there. We'll talk about these cameras a bit more in a minute. I just want to quickly talk about these. This here is a Toshiba Camilio Pro HD camcorder. There we go. If I can even turn this round. There we go. Shoots like that. Oh, low battery, right? I wouldn't suggest getting one of these to make a short film. You may see a company called ApeTech. They basically make the exact same cameras. I wouldn't really advise getting one of these if you're wanting to make a short film, and the reason being that the quality is just nowhere near as good as you would think or as advertised. It records onto one of these though, which is great, which is solid state. Just get an SD card. Picked up that camera for over £100, but really, let's say the sound is really terrible on it, but in good good lighting conditions it actually looks pretty cool, but unless you get optimal lighting conditions, the picture's quite grainy. It does record in 720p however, so if you do get great lighting conditions it can look pretty cool. Here's an old digital camera, stills camera, that's got some video on it. The older digital stills cameras only really recorded in about 15 frames per second, but what I'm recording on here is a digital stills camera, so you know, this is good enough to tell a story, certainly on the internet. And lastly, a mobile phone. Loads of mobile phone cameras are pretty poor, but you know, some of the more recent ones can be pretty decent. You can get decent video footage on them, and you might even be able to use them to tell your own little story. Perhaps even a story that involves acknowledging that it's on a mobile phone. So anyway, I want to go back to these, which is the Hi8 and Video 8 cameras. So there are two things which I think are, well, one thing especially which is essential, it's one of the reasons that this camera fails badly. You must try and get a camera that has a manual focus. If we look here on this side of this camera, it has a manual focus down here. And what that basically means, this one as well, is that you can choose where your camera focuses, so you can focus on things on the foreground and then the background will blur, etc. That's really, really important, because having a camera with an autofocus can be an absolute nightmare to get a good, decent shot. If your actors are moving around, if there's objects moving around in frame, the focus can keep shifting, and that's just going to look terrible. So that's one of the reasons, apart from the sound as well, why this camera fails for making a short film. You could still get away with it, but it's going to make your life live in hell. So what's good about this one, this Sony one, this is an older one, and it's got, this is the other thing that's quite important, is your exposure settings. It's got an auto exposure, so not an auto exposure rather, it's got manual exposure, so you can set the exposure. The exposure is basically just the iris, the lens, how wide it opens up and how much light it lets in, and you're going to need to try and alter that depending on the situation that you're filming in. So that's pretty cool that that's got manual focus and it's got manual exposure settings. It doesn't have a white balance. That's the third thing that's pretty cool if you can find that on a camera. That basically means that you point your camera at something that's white and you adjust it until what you see on camera is similar to what's happening in real life. So the colours that your camera picks up are more authentic. We're running out of time here, so this is the camera that I'm mainly going to use for my project. It has manual focus. The picture quality is really good for a Hi8 camera. Let's say I picked up for £50 with this pretty cool carrier case. And the only down point is it's got a black and white viewfinder, and it doesn't have like an LCD screen that pops out, which makes things a little bit easier. But the image quality is better than this camera, so I'm going to be using mostly this. The exposure settings unfortunately aren't manual, but the auto settings that it has, you've got a variety of settings that you can go through, are pretty good. So we should hopefully be able to come out with something that's pretty awesome. And lastly as well, if you can get this, an external mic slot so you can put in an external microphone if you want to, is really pretty important as well. So yeah, these are your options so far. I'm running out of time in this video, so I'm going with these two and mainly this one. And they use these old Hi8 tapes, which are really cheap to come by. Okay, so that's what we're going for. See you in the next video.